Hey, Dr. Christianson here with you. So what kind of protein is best for those with thyroid disease? This is a super important topic, and this has been I don't know, it's a personal interest topic for me. And here's a little bit why about that. I experiment with a lot of different dietary approaches over the years for my own health. And um, my health got better the more I became deliberate about my diet, the more I ate unprocessed foods. But I have pitfalls. There's a lot of very restrictive diets out there, and I stumbled into many of those. And what I learned was that I could ruin my health even though I thought I was eating healthy. And one of the biggest variables in that was how much protein I was consuming. There's a couple of ideas out there about protein, one of which is that Americans get too much protein, that no one has a protein deficiency. Well, the protein deficiency thing is true. Protein deficiencies almost never happen apart from severe starvation. If you get enough calories, you're probably getting enough protein. Now, I use those silly square quotes. What does that mean? Well, enough protein is kind of like enough vitamin C to not get scurvy. You can not get scurvy on like 10 milligrams of vitamin C per day. That doesn't mean that you wouldn't be healthier by getting 20 or 30 milligrams in some other ways. So yes, you won't get kwashiorkor or protein calorie malnutrition if you're getting enough food. But that's a bit of a red herring. The different question is, how much protein are you going to do your best at? How much protein is most healthful for you? So protein is one of the three macronutrients. We've got protein, fats, and carbs. And this is where our calories come from. So macro means they're big because these are things you can actually see and touch and taste as opposed to like microscopic vitamins. And nutrients, they're essential. We need all of them. Now, fats and carbs are different than proteins. They are primarily energy sources. And we should have some of both. We shouldn't avoid either of them completely. But you can mix and match, and you've got more options here. Our protein needs are more fixed. And the reason for that is protein is used to repair our bodies and to carry out a lot of chemical reactions. And the chemical reactions are non-negotiable. So if we consume too little protein to carry out chemical reactions, we borrow protein from our tissues. And that isn't good. We're borrowing from muscle mass, bone tissue, skin, hair, and nails. That's where we get the surplus protein from. So either we get enough in our diets to power all that stuff, or we borrow from our lean body mass. And I don't have to tell you why that's not good. You don't want to lose your hair or have dry skin or have brittle nails, but muscle tissue, that's such a big deal. So over time, so much of what we think of as normal aging is really a disease called sarcopenia, and it's a gradual erosion of muscle tissue, muscle and bone. And that's why people are prone to get frail, why they fall easily, why they break their hips, why they can not resist minor infections because they've lost their body's reserves. Your lean body mass, that's your reserve. That's your backup strength and power. And people lose that as they age, but they really don't have to. And one of the biggest factors is the overall long-standing protein intake. So how much is optimal? The deficiency amounts or thresholds that pretty much everyone has passed. But how much is optimal? How much is best for you? Well, there's two answers to that. One of which is if you're already doing okay, and I'll talk about that one first. The next one is if you want to improve some of those areas. So the first one, if you're already doing okay, optimal protein is probably about a gram of protein per pound of lean body mass. What does that mean? Well, we've got lean mass and fat mass. So whatever our fat mass is, the rest is lean. We hear about body composition testing or body fat testing. And, women are often in the 20 to 35% range body fat, adult women. Guys might be a little bit lower, 15, 35% is not uncommon. So what you do is that number, the opposite part is the lean mass. So if a woman is 20% body fat, she has 80% lean body mass. And easy math, if she weighed, I'll make it really easy math. If she weighs 100 pounds and she's 20% body fat, she has 20 pounds of fat and she has 80 pounds of lean body mass. So if she wants a gram of protein per pound of lean body mass per day, she wants 80 grams of protein per day. That's for breaking even and maintaining. Now, what if you want to do better than that? What if you want to regain some muscle? What if you've had some bone thinning that you're aware of and you want to rebuild some of that? Well, now we're thinking about a higher amount. Now we're thinking about more like a gram of protein per pound of ideal body weight per day. So this is more. Let's go back to our little 100-pound gal. So she's 20% body fat. Let's say, I don't know, just to make this simple, let's say she has 2 pounds she doesn't want to carry with her anymore. And her ideal body weight is 98 pounds. Well, so if she wanted to get denser bones or she wanted to improve her muscle mass and her body composition, she'd want about 98 grams of protein per day. You could call that 100 to make it easy because you can't be that precise. So yeah, if you want to improve on your lean body mass, you want more like a gram of protein per pound of ideal body weight per day. Some common numbers say that a woman is 145 pounds, but she calls 135 pounds her fighting weight. I just talked to someone yesterday who said that. So she would think about 135 pounds for her 135 grams for her protein target per day. So how do you work protein into your diet? How do you time it? How much do you have at once? Well, there's a lot of misconceptions out there, one of which is that you can only absorb a little bit of protein at a time. That's not true. You can absorb a whole lot at once just fine. What is true, though, is that it all works better if we spread it out throughout the day. And the reason for that is if we go more than like 4 or 5 hours without protein, we start to chip away at our muscle tissue. And it's way easier to pull it out than it is to put it back. So you don't want to have long gaps of no protein. So for that reason, you want to spread it out rather evenly. So definitely protein with those main 3 meals, definitely protein with breakfast. And for a lot of folks, when you look at the gram targets, you're probably going to add in another serving or so mid-morning and or mid-afternoon as well. So you want that timed and distributed rather evenly. Now, the other thing that comes up is when you think about how much protein you find in foods, what foods are dense in that, it's not easy to hit that target. Highest quality protein foods are going to be poultry, meat, fish and seafood. We'll also see this from soy foods, from lentils, also been like eggs, dairy. And these are foods that we can't have a ton of. For example, eggs and dairy, some avoid them because of the iodine or some have allergies to them. Not everyone consumes a lot of animal flesh with all their meals. Not everyone wants to, and that's fair. So when you take those things into account, you realize that you don't get that much that easily. Now, there is protein in almonds and peanut butter and pinto beans and quinoa and all sorts of other foods. I didn't count those, and that wasn't an accident. The reason I didn't count those is because they contain protein as a secondary element. It's not their main jam. Their main jam, like in the case of quinoa, is carbs. They have 5 to 6 times as much carb as they have protein. Or if we think about almonds, their main jam is fat. They're 5 times as much fat as protein. Those aren't bad foods. Carbs and fats are not bad things. But if you're counting on them to get to your protein target, you're going to overeat. You're going to get way too much total food. There's just no way around that. The math doesn't work otherwise. If you rely on lower quality foods that have protein as a secondary ingredient, you will get too much food. You can play with the numbers yourself, but I promise you'll find that out. So you want to think about the high quality sources. And once you think this all through and the numbers and the timing and the sources, you're going to want a protein supplement. It's just no way around that. So then it's which one do you choose? There's a lot of stuff on the market these days. We've got products that are egg-based. We have soy. There's casein. There's whey, collagen, bone broth, beef protein, paleo protein. We have rice, pea, hemp, mushroom. There's a few more odd ones too, but that's the bulk of what you're going to find for products on the shelves. And how do you pick through them? Well, easiest first thought is you want to make sure it's not going to wreck your thyroid. That's what we're talking about here. And there, the consideration is the iodine content first and foremost. And that chops out the dairy-based and the egg-based products. They've got a bunch of iodine. I've seen assays, and typically there's about 60 to 100 micrograms of iodine per serving. A couple years back, I was really considering adding a whey option in one of my protein shakes, but all the assays I could find had unacceptable levels of iodine. I couldn't work around that. That's why I don't offer one. So those you wish to avoid because they overtly will hurt, slow down, inflame your thyroid. Other big consideration you want to think about is going to be protein quality. So proteins are clusters of amino acids. And amino acids are things that there's essential and non-essential. The essential ones we need, we cannot make. The non-essentials, we can make them. They're not essential. And the protein paradox is that proteins that are full of non-essential amino acids, not only do they not work, they're counterproductive. They make you worse off than you were before you ever met them. So imagine like someone gave you a bad check. Someone wrote a bad check for you. You went to deposit it in your account. Well, nothing happens. The money just doesn't go in. But with a bad quality protein, it's like that money comes out. It's not just that the check doesn't work. It's like that it draws it from your account. So when you consume poor quality proteins, it's like a negative protein intake. You're actually worsening your protein status more than you would have had you not consumed that. So I rant about this because these things are just ridiculously popular nowadays. This is our bone broth, our collagen, our hydro beef, our paleo protein. And honestly, they're all the same thing. You look at the amino acid profiles on all those 4 products, they're the same thing. And here's the dirty story. They are chemically digested and degraded cowhide and hooves and leftovers and scraps. That's what they are. They're the cheapest raw material there is because no one wants it. And that's why we're seeing these things pushed so much. They've got the best sale margins. Yeah, they're poor quality protein. They're not effective. The idea about collagen and bone broth helping you in other ways, the data is not clear. You can debate back and forth about that, but I'll put that aside. But let's just talk about its value as a protein supplement. There is none. It's a total scam that they can even say this thing gives you 9 grams of protein per serving. It doesn't. It's got a bunch of non-essential amino acids, but that doesn't work like quality protein inside of your body. So those just aren't viable options. And it makes me nuts because I can think about one really clear example. This was a friend of mine and a good guy, struggled with his health in various ways, like a lot of people do. He was trying to drop a few pounds and get his blood pressure lower. And he wanted to do the metabolism reset diet. And I'm like, sure, let me walk you through this. And here's the basic idea. Here's some links. And yeah, go for it. I think you'll do really well. So I talked to him either at the end or close to the end, and he was seeing no benefits whatsoever. And I was like, okay, well, I'm sorry to hear that. That's not cool. But I've learned from talking to people that there's a reason. There's some way that the instructions didn't quite translate, didn't quite land. Something went wrong along the way. Something got lost in translation. So I'm like, well, talk me through how you do this. What are you using? Which products? How are you timing it? What are you doing for your snacks? And right from the gate, he goes, oh yeah, I'm using this good bone broth protein. I'm like, dude, that's not protein. You're not getting your protein. All you're going to be doing is starving yourself and eroding your muscle tissue. It won't work. And he was kind of emotionally attached to that product for whatever reason, but he humored me and was willing to try it with a different version of protein. And next time around, it all worked fine. And I've seen that countless times. Not only does this stuff not work, it makes things worse for people. So don't waste your time on that. If I thought it was good, I would be selling that. I'd be pushing it and championing it. I could just as well. It'd be easy to do so. I'd have a lot of momentum around me, but that's not what works for people. And that's not what the data suggests. So yeah, not good options. Then we think about other factors. So what we're left with now is several plant options. We've got soy, hemp, mushroom, pea, and all things that are reasonable options. A consideration that's practical is just cost per serving. Mushroom proteins are really cool. I've looked at those. I've watched the research on that. They're promising. They're not cost effective. They're not superior to other proteins, but they're 5 to 10 times the cost per serving. I can't justify that, and I wouldn't ask anyone else to either. Then we think through about just protein quality and completeness, and also taste and absorbability. When we take those things into account, pea protein really comes out on top. It's got a lot going for it. We've had a couple of big studies recently in which it's been compared to whey and egg protein. Studies that have been done on adults, and they've shown that pea protein can adequately help them recover from exercise, grow muscle mass, stabilize blood sugar, offset diabetic risks. And several of these studies were comparing pea against other groups that did the same amounts from whey or soy. Pea does fine. Pea protein is totally effective. Many will say that it's less complete or it's not as high quality or this or that, but that's just not true. And we have now large quality human studies to show that. It does work. It is effective. It is palatable. It is well absorbed. So to make protein work really well, what are some things that work well with it? Well, back to that timing issue, your first meal of the day, your first protein intake is the most critical. That one sets the stage for your entire day's state of metabolism. And when you get the right things, everything works better. In the morning, resistant starch is a phenomenal complement to protein. Resistant starch is this thing that makes your blood sugar and insulin steady and even for the whole rest of the day. Also, it improves the uptake of protein and it improves the health of the intestinal tract. It makes the gut have a better balanced flora and more able to assimilate and utilize protein. So I've combined a high quality pea protein with resistant starch for the daily reset shake. In pea protein, there have been concerns about iodine content in some raw materials. We do assay our suppliers. We have found pea protein raw materials that had unacceptable amounts of iodine. We obviously rejected those. So we do assay our raw materials and our final product for iodine content. We know that there's negligible amounts there and we can assure people of that. So yes, resistant starch is a good complement. A few of the things that I think are good fits as well would include apple pectin. So there's a lot of good data about pectin raising the Bacteroides amount of bacteria. These are the ones that make us skinny. These are the bacteria that thin people naturally have, and we can augment those by adding in apple pectin. It also is a good thing for reducing cholesterol. It makes a nice texture, and the flavor is awesome. So it's a good complement for a lot of reasons. I also included some medium-chain triglyceride. There's some good reasons for that. That can help cognitive function. That may also reduce food cravings. You get some of the benefits of ketones without the detriments of going ketogenic. So that's the cool thing about having a bit of that in there. Also nice texture and flavor enhancer. I also think about compounds like glutamine and other things like N-acetylglucosamine that help the gut lining. And I put those together into the daily reset shake. So this is really my answer to the protein conundrum. You know, what type do you want? How much do you want? What do you want with it? How do you time it? And I've flavored this only with natural stevia. So you've got a plant-based flavoring compound, which is natural and safe, well documented. You've got the high-quality clean protein that's well absorbed. You've got the resistant starch to help the gut lining and lower insulin, help to break down body fat quicker. And it's the perfect standalone for an easy meal. You can mix it up just as itself with water, and we get rave views about the tastes. So that's a great breakfast, and that can be an optional thing for mid-morning or mid-afternoon if your protein targets do justify that. During the metabolism reset diet, I do suggest it for breakfast and for lunch for that 28-day cycle. But after that cycle is over and you're adding meals back in, it still can be an option for a second serving throughout the day for hitting that protein target. So that's the promise of protein: better body composition, better energy throughout the day, better health. And this has been a game changer for people. I remember one of the first patients I saw before I was even practicing by myself when I was a resident, and she was nearly bedridden from fatigue. The change that turned her around was just getting to a good protein target. That one thing was life-changing for her. And I've seen similar stories of exercise capacity, hair health, energy, mental function, all these things coming back just by getting your protein targets. It's such a big deal. So please do think this through and figure out how many grams you would do best with and what it takes to get there. And if the food needs some help, think about the daily reset shake as a good natural option to get there. All right, Dr. C here with you. Take great care, and I'll see you again really soon.